Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Patricia Mota. I'm President and CEO of the Hispanic Alliance for Career Enhancement, a national nonprofit based in Chicago. Its mission is to positively impact workplaces by cultivating the of Latino talents. I hope you are hanging in there, staying positive and focusing on what you can control. And a quick plug, our National Leadership Summit is taking place on April 21st and 22nd. Those of you joining us for Cafecito, use the free complimentary code Cafecito when you go to the registration page so that you can join us for these days filled of professional development, networking, and lounge opportunities to connect with many great people from across the country. And you see it there on the screen. So I'm excited to engage with you all today. And as we wrap up this Women's History Month, we have a very dear special woman joining us today, Rocio Garcia, who is one of our National Board of Directors, but also is a Regional Territorial Manager at Bimbo Bakehouse. Bienvenida, Rocio.
Thank you, Patricia. It's a pleasure to be here this morning.
We are not hearing you.
You can't hear me? I'm off mute. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
It cut out.
Can you hear me now?
And I know we checked this before we got.
Are you good to go?
Can you hear me, Rocio?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, we can hear you.
And I can hear you, yes.
Gotta love these tech.
You know what? It happens, right? But can you, it happens. We can never prepare for it, though. So
let me try something else here.
You're on mute.
Now, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Can you hear me? We are back. Perfect.
All right, gotta love it. You know what happens to us every day on our Zoom calls and our meetings. So, bienvenida, Rocio. Let's give this another take. We usually start by asking our guests, what's your favorite morning beverage of choice, or how do you like your cafecito prepared?
You know, I prefer a latte, almond milk. Sometimes I'll do a hazelnut, but I do sometimes venture out and do like a dirty chai.
Nice.
How do you like your cafecito?
You know, because I love cafe very much, and I have a tendency of drinking probably too many cups throughout the day. I'm trying to do better, alternating with tea. I take it straight, black, so that way the sugar and the cream doesn't add to my calorie intake throughout the day.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Consumer.
Hey, Rocio, so, and those of you tuning in, please get your comments, your questions ready as we want to make sure we're engaging you throughout this conversation. So let's get to know Rocio a bit more. Can you share with our audience in terms of your professional background to how you got to what you're doing today, and about your cultural background as well?
Sure. I started off, you know, I consider myself a foodie. That's part of one of my identities, and we'll talk about that later, but it deals a lot with my career as well. I started off early on dealing with high-end gourmet food from Spain. So I really had a great experience into what now is the CPG industry for me, through traveling with chefs and having products such as like manchego cheese, olive oil, olives, and wine being imported from Spain that I represented for many different large food groups such as like Let Us Entertain You, Levy Restaurants, and things like that. So that really brought me into the food and beverage industry. Through that, then I went into working for Coca-Cola. I worked for Coca-Cola for about 6 years. And really that was a transition from, you know, talking about jamón ibérico to then talking about Coca-Cola. What a transition that was. But I think it was one of the greatest learning experiences of my career to really understand working from an international company that's a smaller company to a global one of the largest companies, right? Now I have the pleasure and honor to work for the largest bread company in the world and currently the largest ranking CPG company in the industry, which is Grupo Bimbo, and Bimbo Bakehouse is a division of Grupo Bimbo. So I've been with the company for about 2 years now. I lead the entire Midwest region. So I work with a lot of food service and food and beverage. And as you guys might know, through COVID, that was one of the largest impacted industries. So we've really had to pivot, adjust. And I don't know who said this a long time ago, but change is the only constant. So I think as something as what has COVID brought to us is really the ability to be flexible and change and always keep our eye on the horizon. In terms of my cultural identity, so I know we're going to talk about intersectionality. I know you and I have had many conversations on that. So I am Latina. I do identify as a Latina. I'm a woman. I am a woman of color. I am also a member of the LGBTQ plus community. I am also first generation. My family, my parents were born in Mexico. I was born here in the States. And so those are a few of many, right? We share that foodie at heart, and but I'm also an artist. There's a lot of different things. And I think that all of these really add texture. All these really create avenues of connectivity to the human society and how we interact with people, how we view people. And it also provides us the ability to understand and have empathy towards each other in different ways. And so I think we've seen a lot of that in the journey of this country in the last year. But I think we've also seen a lot of that in corporate America and how they're gearing and incorporating those learnings into their structure, into their company cultures, and how that's being executed.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to digging a little bit deeper on that component. And first of all, I can't believe it's already been 2 years, Rocio, since you've been there. But also, talking about, the theme, right? This year at HACE, right, we come up with an annual theme every year. And it's we lead at the intersection of identity, equity, and unity. And so the identity is everything you just mentioned, and we'll continue to discuss that. But to your point, the importance for organizations, for individuals to understand that we each bring an intersectional identity to, and how are we embracing that, right? And ensuring that folks are able to exude that authentically. And then the second piece being around equity is like, how are we meeting individuals where they are, right? Providing the tools, the resources, the opportunities. The other piece is structurally, right, for organizations, like what are they doing in terms of their processes? And the unity, the allyship, right? How are we moving together across all community groups to ensure that we're building a more equitable, inclusive society? So that being said, Rocio, can you share, with us, what does that mean to you, or any advice regarding those pillars?
I think that those 3 pillars are so important today and age, right? We've learned that diversity, and I think corporate America has learned that diversity does not mean equity and does not mean unity at all times. So I think really, as we've identified these 3 different pillars, equity, unity, and identity, understanding that equity is meeting everyone where people are, and understanding what that means, and that companies are now really understanding how to provide those resources to empower their employees and provide pathways of developing within those companies and really improving that company culture. And what does that mean? Well, that means really understanding what our company culture has developed and what the people that are part of that company are and who they are, and understanding their identity. And unity, right? We all want to be seen. We all want to be heard. But in order for that to happen, we need to be understood. And education needs to happen to create then unity. You want to honor the individual, but you want to unify together. So I think that there's a lot of work being done in that in terms of the D&I world. And, we're seeing that grow little by little, and we're seeing that pivot. And I love the pivot of diversity does not mean all the time equity. That really is different.
Yeah, no, all excellent points. And you spoke a little bit earlier, right, about some layers of your identity, and one of them being art. And I love I know I tell you this every time I see you on the video, the artwork behind you. but also how has your intersectional identity impacted your career trajectory, any unique challenges or even opportunities that you would say, because I think it's also important that when we discuss intersectionality, it's a label, again, that was founded by Kimberly Crenshaw, that discuss how our intersectional identities can further, and this was particularly talking about Black women, right? Particular oppress an individual or provide additional opportunities of privilege, right? So what are your thoughts on that?
You know, I think that's such a large question, and there's so much richness in it. But I do think that there's a few different things. I think that as we continue to grow, I think everyone has their own individual journey, right? And that journey is of self-education and self-empowerment, but also learning and educating yourself about others. So through me, for me, in my intersectionality, I am a lighter skinned Latina, right? Within our own Latino society and Latino community, there is colorism, and understanding what that lighter Latino privilege skin gives me, understanding that is something within the complexity of that. And not only alone with that, but within the minority groups of Latinos, African Americans, so on and so forth. So I think that that is one piece. But what it's provided me through it in my career and understanding is when I walk in the room, I know that what people see first is me, a woman, right? Mm-hmm. And so being in the CPG industry, being a very male-dominated industry, because I did deal a lot with logistics, manufacturing, or labor workforce of that and execution of sales of that, I have always, or sometimes been, a majority of the time, the only woman in the room. And that does bring a layer of its own biases that people might bring into that, specifically the men in the room, right? Also being a younger person in a position, so ageism, right? That brings something else as well. And also being a Latina woman, I think that there's certain perceptions or certain societal constructs around Latina women that we face as well. And so those are things that I think we've managed through, and all of us kind of confront in different stages of our lives, or in different ways, or in different sectors of our lives. But also through this time, I think for me, understanding how I want to empower myself by those different things. And what that brings to me is also the ability to be a leader. And I think myself as a fierce leader, a leader with empathy, a leader with understanding, because I want to continue to understand others. And through my many layers, my little onion, my many layers of identities, I want to really be able to provide a pathway to understand and connect with others that I lead and others that I work with. So I think as a leader, understanding my intersectionalities, my many layers, has allowed me to be a better leader in the end.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And think of, for those of you tuning in, think about how the many layers that you bring to the table. And I think it's critical, Rocio, to have you, for example, sharing your story today, because I'm sure there's someone tuning that can identify with maybe several components of your identity, or maybe a one component. They're like, oh, you know, here's a leader in the CPG industry, and she could do it, I can do it too, right? So that's why it's critical that we have you here, but also for those of you tuning in to think about, reflect, and share your story, because it helps you become that authentic leader. The more aware and comfortable we are with who we are and the different components that we bring to the table, the more effective we become over time. And it's a process, right? It's something that's constantly evolving. So if you have any questions or comments, get them ready. We want to be able to open it up. And thank you for the comments, Joe, regarding this conversation. So it is Women's History Month, right? The last day, I can't believe, you know, April's tomorrow, right? And we, you know, got to feature women throughout the month, their stories. What advice do you have for women? I mean, we all know about the gaps, whether it's, you know, representation in leadership roles, whether it's the pay gap, right, that we've been talking about, that specifically, you know, Latinas on average, for example, 55 cents to the dollar. What advice do you have for women that are seeking to advance in their careers and get opportunities, because you've been able to not only excel in your career, but also move around, right, and continue to grow?
Yeah, I think definitely for me, one of the biggest pieces of advice is sisterhood and networking within a really core group of women, right? I always talk about having a sponsor and a mentor. I have several sponsors, women that speak for me when I'm not in the room and in the rooms that I want to be in. So I think that's extremely important, identifying and understanding the rooms you want to be in, understanding the women that you want to represent you and speak for you and advocate for you, but also those women that you want to mentor you. Sometimes one person can play both roles, right? But I think having several people in different sectors of the industry that both are your sponsors and your mentors really give you a beautiful tapestry of what the current markets are and what that looks like, depending on what industry your career is in, or if you are trying to change industries, right? Always having that. I think for me, when I say sisterhood or womenship in terms of partnership and things like that, and network is really being there for each other, learning from each other. I think at times we've been pinned against each other many of times. So really working through what those biases are, working through what those fears or hurdles might be, and really talking to that through, let it be someone at work that you're having, that you want to approach to become your mentor or your sponsor, being able to ask and empowering your voice to really ask someone to be like, I'd love for you to be my mentor. Do you have time to meet once a month? You know, I'm looking for a sponsor, someone that can speak for me. You know, I want to be someone that is in this room. And what does that look like? How does that become, and how does that relationship form to empower you and to be able to move you forward, right? It's about moving each other forward. So it's really having those people there to help move you forward, but also knowing that you're going to be giving back to them as well, right? So I'm excited. I've been someone that has gained a lot by having mentors and sponsors. I have been asked to do the same. And so it is one of the most gratifying things to do. And you know, it's something that I look forward to doing more.
Yeah, that's great. No, definitely mentorship is key for everyone. Paul has a question in terms of, do you feel you have to negate your colorism when you're in the boardroom? How much have you had to change your identities? So I think the general question is, right, like, have you ever had to hide any component?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question.
Yeah.
I think I have learned to leverage and be empowered by my colorism, or by me being a woman of color in the boardroom. I think it brings certain things to light, or I perceive or see certain things that others might not see through the lens that I see it, right? So I through my career have learned to be empowered and feel strong in my view, my voice, and my feedback, and what I can contribute to the company, to the future, to insights, to the strategic planning that comes into where we want to go as a division and as a company. That's one thing, because I represent a large group of consumers in many different ways. Within all my intersectionalities, I represent multiple different sectors of consumers. So I can really speak to those different trends, consumer trends, and how that is in a very personal way. In terms of when do I feel that I've had to change or hide my identity, you know, I can't hide that I'm a woman. I can sometimes blend if I'm Latina, but I can hide if I'm LGBTQ+. So I have, and I'll be very frank, have had to at times. I do travel a lot. I cover most of the Midwest. And there are states outside of my very liberal Chicago bubble where I need to ensure as a woman that I am safe. And those are things that aren't because of my company, but it is because of the public. So not necessarily in my career, but in society, I think that that's just something that we're not where we need to be. It doesn't mean that I won't speak to it and I won't share it where I feel safe, because I want to be an advocate and I want to create a space for others. But even within corporate America, you know, my company is a very amazing, supportive company, right? But again, we have clients, we have accounts that cover all the United States. And it's really talking and thinking about my safety is my priority at the end of the day. That is something that I have had to do in the past in other companies as well, not because of my company, but if I'm traveling and I'm at a hotel or at a conference of some type, that is something.
Well, Rocio, thank you for being frank and honest about that. I think a lot of us could relate. Whether, you know, I think earlier on in my career, I wouldn't disclose my age because I didn't want to be considered not knowing what I'm doing so everybody has those components, right? So we have one last question. Can you share any instances where you had to prove your worth more than others because of all the different, again, the identity piece?
Yeah, I think definitely throughout my career, I've had to, at one point, you know, I was a manager of most of the people I managed, I was their daughter's age. So really kind of what Patricia was just speaking to, when people are talking to you about like their daughter's wedding, and she's the same age that you are, and you know, men sometimes tend to call you hun, or, you know, or at that time they were, this was a few years ago. I think I definitely have had to really assert myself as the manager or the leader, and how do we do that, right? And I think it is also educating and connecting in a way that this man might not have known what he was doing, and it might not have been intentional, and really sitting down and having a cafecito, which is what I did, and really talking and educating him and speaking to, when you do this, it makes me feel this way, because they might not consciously know that. And when you approach it, I think a lot of marriage counselors kind of give this advice too, because you're not coming off confrontational, you're really sharing how that is. And being vulnerable does not mean relinquishing power as a leader. It doesn't. It allows the door for connectivity, which allows the door for your employee to feel empowered and for him to see you for who you are and to grow from that. And that became
I love that
a relationship for me.
Yeah, you got to be open to those candid conversations. One last comment, Rocio, something you're hopeful for before we wrap up?
I'm excited for our summit. I'm excited to connect. I'm looking forward to it. I'm hopeful for the day that we can go full live in-person party, like dinner, things like that. And the summer's here, so outdoor will be great. But I do look forward to, that's one of the greatest things every year, connecting with the HACE network. I love being a part of HACE, so I look forward to that.
Well, we love that you are a part of the HACE familia, and those of you tuning in, you are also part of this familia. Don't forget to go to the HACE online web.org so that you can use your free comp code to join us for the summit on April 21st and 22nd. It's Cafecito. So thank you, Rocio. Again, thank you to all of those tuning in. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Bye.